All right. So let's talk about themes. All right. A main theme is going to help you establish some brand identity here, right? And the identity of the game itself. So you really got to understand the genre you're working in, the types of games, that this tune might work in. So let's just take a listen. All right. Sometimes we have level themes, right? Something like here I have some images from Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, right? Each level has its own unique music, which is really cool because it's not only just different songs, it's different instrumentation, different moods, different textured palettes of instrumentation. It's just beautiful. And I definitely encourage anyone out there to listen to some of the newer, like Breath of the Wild, or here Twilight Princess. Any of the Zelda series music soundtracks are just fantastic. Also, there are character themes. I won't go into all the character themes here. You can listen to them later, but we want to help tell a character's story and enhance personality, right? Just get you more into that game world, and it's just fun sometimes to just have a character theme. You really feel like you own that character, and this is my theme song. It's always a great thing to have when you have the opportunity. So let's talk about the actual production. As I mentioned before, you want to have the right instrumentation for a particular piece of music or a particular soundtrack, and what that is varies greatly, right? Depends on the genre of the game and the budget and amount of music and so forth. Right, we want to have a nice, really compelling set of instruments to help tell a story, right? We're help selling the game here. But how many and which ones? We don't know. We're going to try to stick with some certain range of instrumentation. In other words, like I know I'm going to have either 5 to 8 instruments on this particular song, or 20 instruments, or we're going to have an 80-piece orchestra, who knows, to maintain some sort of continuity, some aesthetic consistency among all of the tracks, all right? And as I said before, when I'm writing music, before I write the first note, I'm just listening to tons of music, whether it's similar video game compositions, which would be like the competition, right? The friendly competition, or I'm actually listening to the period music, the actual, kind of just non-video game type music that we're going to be using in the project. And if time ever allows, you want to leave a little bit of room open for experimentation with different music compositional techniques. In other words, I may want to try to write a piece of music that's, 2 minutes long, and in there I'm going to try to make 3 verses, 2 choruses, then I'll have this kind of funky solo thing, and or maybe I'll try something more straight ahead. You don't often have time to do a lot of experimentation, just because of the nature of audio. It tends to be it shouldn't be this way, but it's usually one of the later tasks that happen in the game, in the pipeline. And it usually happens when there's not a lot of communication in the beginning about how the audio can really help to serve the game, right, and help sell it. And or sometimes I'll just be called to put out a proverbial fire. It's like, we had audio and it's terrible, we need you to come in. And I'll jump in and swoop in. But at that point, there's only like a few weeks left in development, so I'm going to just scramble and come up with stuff. So there's not a lot of time for experimentation. But you get used to this sort of thing, and you build templates, just like you have, hopefully you have some templates in Reaper. I have a whole bunch of, composition templates and things like that to just be able to jump in quickly and see if I can come up with some initial ideas and then, send those home, like finalize them. All right. There's a couple of different ways to go about writing music, and the best way, obviously, if you have like, multi-million-dollar budget, you want to go to a commercial studio, hire musicians, if the type of music you're writing is going to be orchestral, right? If you're doing something that's just going to be electronic and you can probably do it on your own, that's fine. But if you're going all the way here, God of War 4 or something like that, you want to do big budget studio and have maybe you write the music, but someone else helps you orchestrate it, and then someone else conducts it, or who knows what. Big budget, lots of time and money here. But I will say that more than often than not, it's sometimes just one or two or three people working in their own project studios that are using virtual instruments, and it's just going to save a huge amount of time, a huge amount of money. It's not going to be the spectacle that is full fidelity orchestral compositions, but it's pretty darn good. There's not much monetary overhead aside from having to purchase your own equipment, right? And you have total control over the recording process because you may be the one doing it from top to bottom, right? You're writing the music, you're mixing and editing it, mastering it, and getting it into the game all by yourself. And that is just out of necessity. That oftentimes is the way things go in the land of music composition for games. Other recording methods may include, as I say here, MIDI sequencing. Maybe I'm using virtual instruments exclusively, or maybe I'm using some looping software like FL Studio or Sony Acid or something like that. As I'm going through the post-production process, what I like to do is be mindful of what I call spikes, which are these kind of sharp, you see these peaks or these volume fluctuations that may need to be adjusted. And if this is what I think it is, might be like a kick drum or something, right? And so there's a kind of a bass spike there, and that's something you could fix with some simple compression and a little bit of EQ, right? It really depends on the type of music, but I also like to trim silence out of the front and back of the file of an audio clip, just to be sure there's no hiss or noise from electronic instruments or computers or what have you, depending on how you recorded it. And so again, compression, some EQ, and then some final mastering. And what this means is that if I have 10 different songs, no matter how well I try to EQ and compress them, they're all going to texturally be a little bit different in terms of the frequency response. And so I may want to go in, final polish, and go in, put them all in their own project, that kind of the finished stereo files, and put them all up in a row linearly, and listen to them and make some necessary tweaks that get them just right, and then re-render them and send them out for the game, full production. Okay, so there's kind of a two-step process. We've been doing mixing and editing and all that, and we kind of sort of do mastering, which is like maybe we go back the next day and listen to it again and render it, and that's our mastering process, but it's not really mastering. But as we'll see in our final project coming up, we will have the opportunity to do that. We'll have a final mixer who will go in and do like a one pass on it and do a nice polish. That'll be our mastering process. Okay, finally, if you're working on, say, a console, you may want to enter your music into some kind of repository that is part of what they call dev kits. These are consoles that are provided by the manufacturer, like say Microsoft or Xbox, and they look just like the Xbox, but they'll have some hardware in it that's for kind of like performance metrics, diagnostics, testing type stuff, and it may have some software like this one, the Exact Audio Engine, that is a repository for music, but also provides a bit of middleware-ish type feature that's playing back your music in certain ways, they're under different behaviors, controls, logic, what have you. And then lastly, you have testing. Again, just like sound or dialogue, this list could be a mile long as to what and how you want to test your music. But a good rule of thumb for starting might be is this music playback system as effective as we planned? It's kind of a huge question, bordering on the philosophical, but it's true. You want to make sure that it's going to be as effective as you want it to be, not just because it works and we don't want to touch it because it might break. You really want to hopefully have enough time to experiment with it and make sure it's just the right level of effectiveness that you want. And I would say right after that would be like, make sure all your tunes have the right volume and EQ balancing, right? Or did you apply enough compression to the tracks or even the stems? How about fade ins and outs? How about crossfades if you have any? When we do horizontal sequencing, we have a lot of crossfading going on, meaning like one, tune A is fading out while tune B is fading in over it. And so we want to make sure those crossfades work correctly. Do we have enough music to keep everybody happy? Interesting. I found oftentimes there is not enough music, but there'll be time later after the game is released to add some additional tunes, and the fans of the game will usually really like that when some new material comes out. So super quick case study. When I was creating music for Children of the Now way back in the day with Tilted Mill, it was a fun project, City Builder. I was going to do MIDI compositions, but everything that I would be playing back and kind of getting into the computer would be the MIDI performances, but I'd be playing them through synthesizers, samplers, and I'd also include some live performances too, which creates a sense of depth. More, even if you had one live instrument to record a track that was a MIDI performance with virtual instruments, the whole thing is going to seem like there's a lot more going on that actually is like a lot more live instrumentation. And so we didn't have much of a budget, and we had a tight deadline. So I had one word pop into my head, was eBay. And I had a small budget. I went shopping and I got some instruments that I thought would capture some of the kind of the magic of ancient Egypt, right? So I just have a couple like here. This is called an Esraj, and I just played it like a guitar, like you can bow it. Let's just see here what I've got to. This one is called a Bobal Tara. It's actually an old street instrument. It used to be just buttons, but later with piano keys were introduced. But as the physics, the string, the period, the intervals get shorter and shorter, the keys have to get smaller and smaller, and they get really hard to play when you get like right here. But let me just play this for you. It has a unique sound. So you play the keys here, but you strum it with a pick here, and they're 12-ish, 15-ish strings, and they're all tuned to the same key. And when you play hold down the button here and strum, that's the note you get. And then there's like flutes and all this stuff, and a little more talking drum. Why not? It's a cool sound. It bends, and you hold the drum right here under the crook of your arm, and then you hit the head of the drum, and you squeeze with the crook of your arm, and it bends the strings and changes the tension on the drum head, so you get this unique bending kind of sound, the talking drum, if you will. So that was a lot of fun, and I it's one of those things where I look back and even if the music does sound dated after so many years, the compositions seem to have held up, and people still seem to like the tunes. I think it had a lot to do with adding the live performances in this case to the MIDI compositions, which is nice. And I have a bunch of different tunes. If you want to check out some of the soundtrack, you can check it out there. And I just set up a YouTube page not too long ago, and it has the kind of the full soundtrack on there if you ever want to check it out. So anyway, that's it. And we'll see you next time for lecture 10, which will be our last one on soundscapes.